Ethan, sit down. We need to be clear tonight, my dad said, tapping his fork against the plate like a judge's gavel. Saturday, I am clear, I said. I'm applying to law school. My mom laughed. Law school? With what grades? With what money? With my college fund? I said, looking at her. You promised. My dad leaned back. I promised you a future, not a fantasy. Jason smirked from his seat. Dad, ignore him. He just wants attention. I swallowed. I want a chance. My mom slid an envelope across the table, but it wasn't to me. She pushed it straight to Jason. This is yours, honey, for your startup. I stared at the envelope. That's my money. My dad shook his head. That was family money, and the family is investing wisely for once. I stood. You're stealing from me. Jason laughed. Relax, man. When I'm rich, I might hire you as my driver. I looked at my mom. You're okay with this? She didn't meet my eyes. You were never good with responsibility. That's a lie, I said. I worked. I saved. I stayed out of trouble. My dad slammed his hand on the table. And still you're nothing. The word hit me harder than his hand ever had. Say that again. You're nothing, he said, steady and cold. And nobody who dreams too loud. I felt my chest burn. Then let me leave. He pointed toward the door. Do it, since you're so desperate to fail on your own. I picked up my backpack from the corner. Don't call me when you need me. My mom finally looked up. Don't be dramatic. Dramatic? I laughed, but it came out broken. You just erased me with an envelope. Jason waved. Good luck, lawyer. I walked to the door and paused. One day you'll regret this. My dad didn't look at me. One day you'll thank me. I stepped outside, and the door closed without a sound. I checked my pockets under the porch light. $14, I whispered. That's it. My phone buzzed. Jason texted, don't crash on our couch later. I deleted it. I called my mom. Please, I just need tonight. She said, you should learn consequences. I am, I said. I'm living one. The line went dead. I walked until the neighborhood lights faded in a highway glow. A bus roared past and covered me with cold wind. I sat on a bench and stared at my hands. A man sat beside me. You look like the night swallowed you. Something like that, I said. He nodded. You got a ticket? I shook my head. I've got $14 in a dream. He laughed softly. That's dangerous. Yeah, I said. So is staying. The bus arrived and I stood. Where does this go? Downtown, he said. Good, I said. Maybe dreams live closer to the noise. I stepped on, paid my coins, and took the last seat. My phone buzzed again. A message from my dad. One line. Bring your key tomorrow. I typed back. I already gave you my life. Then I turned the phone off. As the bus rattled forward, I pressed my head to the glass. I'll become someone, I told the dark, even if no one believes me. The city swallowed the suburbs, and I let it. If I'm nothing, I said out loud, then I'll build myself from nothing. The bus driver glanced at me in the mirror. You talking to me, kid? I shook my head. Talking to my future. He smiled. Then hold on. I am. I whispered. For the first time, I am. I got off downtown and followed a sign that said shelter. A woman behind a glass window asked, Name? Ethan, I said. Last name? Carter. She typed. Age? 18. Any drugs? No. Any family? I hesitated. Not tonight. She slid a wristband to me. Bed 42. Thank you, I said. A guy on a cot nearby asked, What did you do to earn this place? Dreamed, I said. He laughed. You'll learn. I lay down and pulled the thin blanket up to my chin. The ceiling had a crack shaped like a road. I pointed at it and whispered, That's mine. Another kid across the room said, You talk in your sleep? No, I said. I talk to tomorrow. He rolled over. Good luck with that. I closed my eyes. Good luck with me, I answered. My phone lit once more. A photo from my mom. The family at the table. Jason holding the envelope like a trophy. The caption read, We're moving on. I typed, So am I. Then I deleted the app. I turned to the dark and said my name again, slow and loud in my head. Ethan Carter. It sounded like a promise. Bed 42, right? A man at the shelter whispered. Yeah, I said. Feels like a prison number. He laughed. At least prisons have pillows. I stared at the ceiling and said, I thought adulthood would feel different. Yeah, he said. They lied to all of us. In the morning, a woman shouted, Everyone out by 7. I asked, even if we got nowhere. She snapped, especially then. I walked outside with my backpack and said to myself, one night down. A lifetime to go. At the fast food place, the manager looked me over. You slow? I'm hungry, I said. He shrugged. Close enough. Mop the floor. The mop water was gray and bitter smelling. A worker named Tess said, don't drink it. I wasn't planning to, I said. She whispered, you knew homeless or old homeless? Knew, I said. Give it a week, she said. You'll stop counting. After my shift, I sat behind the building and ate a free sandwich. My phone buzzed. A message from a neighbor said, your parents told everyone you ran away because you couldn't handle life. I typed I was kicked out. No response. I whispered, even my story got stolen. The next day, I walked into a tiny bookstore to warm up. A white-haired woman behind the counter eyed me. You here to read or steal? I can't steal, I said. I'm already empty. She narrowed her eyes. Then you're honest. That's rare. I pointed at a law book. How much for that one? She laughed. More than you can afford. I can work, I said. She leaned forward. Can you alphabetize without crying? Depends on the letters, I said. She smiled. I'm Mrs. Brooks. Don't break anything and you can read. Thank you, I said. I mean it. After closing, she handed me an old book. Take this. I don't have money, I said. She waved me off. Knowledge doesn't want rent. I swallowed. Then I'll pay someday. She said, people like you always do. At the library, I sat with the book and a guy across the table snorted. You studying law? Trying, I said. He smirked. You look like you should be studying sleep. My dreams don't let me, I said. He closed his laptop. I'm Mark. I'm failing contracts and you're pretending they exist. I'm Ethan, I said. I'm practicing believing. He laughed. That's stupid. Yeah, I said. It's working, though. He tapped my book. Read that wrong, and the law eats you. Good, I said. I'm tired of being the meal. He stared. Come here tomorrow. I'll help. Out of boredom. Or pity, I said. Same thing, he said. Days blurred. Shelter at night. Mopping at dawn. Books by afternoon. Mark quizzed me like a drill sergeant. Mrs. Brooks slipped me paperbacks with sandwiches inside. One night at the shelter, the man from bed 42 asked, You winning yet? I'm still breathing, I said. He nodded. That's round one. My phone buzzed again. Another message from my mother's friend read, Your parents said you lost your mind. I typed no. I found it. Then I shut the phone off. At the bookstore, Mrs. Brooks said, Your eyes look sharper. They're hungry, I said. Good, she said. Hunger builds engines. At the library, Mark snapped. You're slow on case law. I'm fast at quitting families, I said. He paused. Sorry. Don't be, I said. It made room. One afternoon, I counted my cash. $21, I said. I'm rich. Mark smiled. Wait till it hits 22. Mrs. Brooks added, Then you'll be dangerous. I laughed for real for the first time and said, I already am. I'm learning. That night, I lay on my cot and whispered, I didn't run away. I ran toward. The ceiling didn't answer, but my chest did. I'm still here, I said. And I'm not done. I woke to beeping in cold light and a burning throat. A nurse said my name wrong, and I tried to fix it, then blacked again. When my eyes stayed open, I saw white walls and felt heavier than stone. What happened? I asked. You fainted mopping floors, she said. My hand shook. Am I fired? She smiled thin. You're alive. I laughed once and it hurt. Figures. She checked a screen and said, We called family. My stomach sank like a drop plate. You shouldn't, I whispered. I counted breaths and prayed silence would answer louder than voices tonight. The door clicked and my father walked in like winter. My mother followed, purse tight, eyes dry. Don't use her number again, he said. Hospital bills are not our hobby. I tried to sit. I just passed out. My mother waved a hand. Drama as always. A nurse asked, Are you family? My father answered, By name only. I said, Dad, I need help. He said, You need a job. My mother added, And a new last name. The room shrank around me. I begged softly, but their faces stayed locked like doors in winter nights without fear or mercy. The nurse frowned. Ma'am, he's very weak. My mother said, He's not our son. The sentence split me clean. Mom, I said, smaller than air. She looked past me toward the wall clock. My father checked his watch and said, "We're late." The nurse whispered, "I'm sorry." I asked her, "Will I be okay?" She answered, "Tonight, yes." I nodded and said to my parents, "Please stay." My mother said, "We've already stayed too long." The nurse squeezed my hand and stayed until machines sang, then faded in an early gray morning while I counted tears like coins in a pocket. My father turned back once. "Take our name off your forms." I said, "It's my name too." He said, "Not tonight." My mother added, "Not ever." I felt heat rise. "You taught me to read," I told her. "You taught me to quit," she replied. I asked, "What did I do?" My father said, "You dreamed without permission." I laughed and coughed. "Then arrest my dreams," I said. He said, "We already did." The door closed behind them, and with it every childhood story I kept folded inside. I begged again, but the hallway answered with footsteps, "Only tonight alone." A nurse signed papers and said, "You can go." I asked, "To where?" She hesitated. "Anywhere safe." I laughed. "Define safe." She handed my bag. "Eat something." I said, "I'll try." Outside the hospital doors, rain bit my face. I texted my father, "You broke me." He replied, "We built you." I wrote, "From scraps." No answer came. I walked until the lights blurred and said, "I won't crawl back." My chest learned a new language, and it spoke fear with every breath forward tonight alone. I promised the rain I would rise and burn brighter than silence someday, somehow. In class I sat shaking. A man with calm eyes said, "Casebook's closed." I froze. He looked at me and said softly, "You okay?" I lied, "Yes, sir." He nodded and continued. Later he stopped my desk. "Name?" "Ethan Carter," I said. He repeated it like a key. "You're bleeding inside," he said. I whispered, "How do you know?" He answered, "I teach storms." I stared at his shoes and wished they could walk me anywhere else today. He leaned closer and said nothing which felt louder than my parents ever were in life until this strange afternoon moment there. He said, "Come tomorrow." I asked, "For what?" He said, "For you." I swallowed. "I'm nobody." He shook his head. "Not here." I said, "I can't pay." He smiled. "Then learn." I asked, "Why help me?" He said, "Because you didn't lie when you said yes." I said I lied. He answered, "About being okay, not about wanting more." The room warmed like a cup in winter hands, and I breathed for once without pain. I said, "Thank you too," quietly, and he said, "Welcome," too softly back, as though hope might shatter if spoken the wrong way by anyone. I walked out into cold air and said, "I'm still here." The street answered with horns. I said, "Hear me." No one did, but I did. I texted Mark. I passed out. He wrote, "You alive?" I wrote, "Barely." He answered, "Library tomorrow." I smiled. "Yes." I looked up and told the sky, "I'm not yours anymore." The night listened better than my home ever had, and I thanked it for patience. I promised myself a name would grow from this ache and stand unafraid tomorrow. I would walk back into class and finally belong somewhere new with borrowed courage. "Ethan, you sure you want this one?" Mark whispered as we stood outside the courtroom. "I need it," I said. "She needs it more." Rachel squeezed my arm. "If we lose, I'm out on the street tonight." "We're not losing," I said, though my stomach shook. "We're telling the truth." The bailiff called, "All rise," and my heart tried to climb out of my ribs. Inside, I looked up and saw medals and flags and the judge's tired face. I took one step, then another. Rachel whispered, "I've never been in court." "Neither have I," I said. "We'll be lost together." Across the room, a man stood and fixed his tie. I knew that tie. It belonged to my Uncle Frank. I felt heat crawl up my neck. Mark muttered, "What's wrong?" "That's my uncle," I said. "And that's his building." Rachel gasped. "You didn't say that." "I didn't know," I said. "But I won't run." I looked to the back row, and my breath vanished. My parents sat there, frozen eyes wide. My mother's hand covered her mouth. My father leaned forward like he'd been punched without fists. The clerk called the case, and my uncle smiled like a salesman. "Good morning, Your Honor," he boomed. I stood. "Good morning," I said. My voice wobbled, and I locked it down. My uncle blinked. "Ethan, I didn't look at him. Counsel for the defendant, I said. He laughed. This is a joke. I swallowed. It's my life. The judge frowned. Proceed. My uncle turned to Rachel. Mrs. Moore, rent was due. She whispered. I paid half. You broke the lease, he said. I snapped. Objection. That lease is illegal. He scoffed. Prove it. I held up the document. No repairs. No heat. No fire exit. He waved me off. Technical garbage. I shook my head. Human garbage is letting a mother and child freeze. The judge leaned forward. Watch your tone. Yes, Your Honor, I said. Rachel paid whenever she could. When the pipes burst, she called. When the ceiling fell, she called. He ignored her. I have messages. My uncle growled. You're humiliating yourself. I looked at my parents. My father stared at his shoes. My mother bit her lip. I turned back. Better me than her. The judge said, present the evidence. Rachel handed me her phone with shaking hands. I showed photos. Mold. Ice in a sink. Wires like spider legs. My uncle snapped, photos lie. I replied, children do not. Her daughter coughs every night. The courtroom murmured. My uncle sneered, she's poor. That's her story. I said, and you're rich. That's your shield. My father shot up. That's enough. The judge barked, sit down or leave. My uncle whispered, you'll regret this. I whispered back, I regret nothing but silence. The judge asked Rachel, do you have anything to say? She stood and shook. I just want a safe place to sleep. My uncle rolled his eyes. I said, Your Honor, eviction is violence when hunger is present. He sighed. Strong words. They're hers, I said. My uncle slammed his folder. He's emotional because we're related. The judge raised a brow. Related? I nodded. Yes. The room inhaled. The judge studied my face. And you still stand here? Yes, I said. Because truth stood first. My uncle pointed at me. He hates me. I hate harm, I said. The judge tapped his pen. I've seen enough. My mother jumped up. Please. The judge snapped. One more sound and you're out. Silence cut everything. The judge said, Mr. Carter, you win. No eviction. Repairs required. Damages paid. I exhaled like I'd been underwater for years. Rachel collapsed into my arms. Thank you, she cried. Thank you. I whispered, you did this. My uncle stared at me like I'd killed something in him. Family doesn't do this. Family doesn't do what you did, I said. My parents rushed forward. My mother pleaded, we didn't know. I laughed without joy. You were watching. My father said, let's talk. I said, we just did. In front of everyone. My uncle muttered, you think you've won. I met his eyes. I already have. Outside the courtroom, Rachel hugged me again. I can breathe. I nodded. So can I. Mark slapped my back. You were insane. Only until justice showed up, I said. I walked past my parents. My mother whispered my name. I didn't stop. My father said, Ethan, please. I turned once. You taught me silence. Court taught me sound. They watched me leave like strangers. Rachel said softly, I'll bake you something. I smiled. Make it warm. She laughed through tears. I stepped into the sun, and it felt different on my skin. Not louder. Not brighter. Honest. I said to myself, I'm not angry. Mark blinked. You're not. No, I said. I'm finished hurting. He nodded. Then you're powerful. I walked down the steps and felt taller than buildings. For the first time, victory didn't scream. It breathed. My phone rang at midnight. I almost didn't answer. When I did, my mother's voice cracked into my ear. Ethan, we need you. I breathed once. Need or want? She whispered. Jason's company collapsed. I said, I'm sorry. She swallowed noise. They're suing your father. I closed my eyes. Then hire a lawyer. She said, we can't. I asked why. She replied, no one trusts us. I laughed gently. Welcome. My father took the phone. Come tomorrow. I said, only if you tell the truth. He paused. We will. I ended the call and stared at the ceiling until morning found me like a witness. At the courthouse, my parents waited as if time were their attacker. My mother reached for me. Thank you for coming. I stepped back. Say it straight. My father cleared his throat. Jason's investors claimed fraud. I said, did you lie? He said, we were careless. I said, that's not an answer. My mother cried, please. I nodded once. I'll listen. Jason rushed in, eyes hollow. Fix this, he begged. I replied, did you steal? He whispered, I followed Dad's plan. My chest tightened. What plan? My father said, just procedures. I asked, whose money did you move? Silence spoke. I pressed mine. My mother looked away. Years ago, she said, we borrowed. My head rang. For my college fund? My father said, family borrows. I laughed without warmth. Family returns. Jason whispered, it was supposed to grow. I said, it grew into a lie. Inside the courtroom, the judge raised an eyebrow at me. Representing family? I answered, I am here for truth. My father hissed, protect us. I said, tell me everything. The prosecutor asked, did you falsify records? My father said, no, I looked at him. He avoided my eyes. My mouth went dry. Answer again. I whispered. He shook his head. Do not correct me. The prosecutor pressed, sir. My father repeated, no. The word felt like a knife placed in my palm. My mother squeezed my arm. Help us. I shook her off. Jason mouthed, please. I stood. Your Honor, request a recess. Outside, I demanded, why lie? My father snapped, to survive. I said, by killing me? My mother sobbed. We were scared. I replied, I was starving. Back inside, the prosecutor displayed a ledger. These transfers correspond to the son's scholarship account. My lungs burned. I turned to my father. You took it. He whispered, we plan to replace it. I said, with what? He said, Jason's success. Jason dropped his head. I didn't know. I asked, you spent it. He whispered, I thought it was a loan. I laughed sharply. Loans have consent. My mother cried, fix this, Ethan. I said, I can't fix theft with silence. The judge said, counsel. I swallowed notion. I withdraw. My father grabbed my sleeve. Don't abandon us. I pulled free. You taught me that first. I faced the bench. They lied. My mother screamed my name. Order, the judge thundered. I met my parents' eyes one last time. You didn't just steal money, I said. You stole mornings. Jason said, I'm sorry. I nodded. Be sorry somewhere else. My father stood. I'm your father. I replied softly. You were. The judge announced charges. My mother collapsed into a chair. I turned and walked. In the hall, my mother chased me. If you leave, we're alone. I said, I was alone first. My father called, come back. I didn't. Jason shouted, I need you. I answered without turning, learn. My feet carried me through doors that felt lighter than paper. Outside, Mark waited. Did you help them? I looked at the sky. I helped myself. He nodded. What now? I exhaled. Now I keep the truth. I walked past the steps where they once held food like power. My phone buzzed again. Jason texted, say something. I typed goodbye. Then I deleted the thread, and my hand stopped shaking. I said out loud, I am not theirs. The wind answered with quiet. I counted 40 breaths and pictured a gate opening inward. Each breath said, mine. Each step answered, free. I did not look back again. I pressed my palm to my heart and felt no chains, only a small, brave engine waking inside. I went to my mother's house alone. She opened the door like it might bite her. Ethan, she whispered, why are you here? I said, for the truth. She stepped aside. Your father isn't home. I replied, good. She led me to the kitchen and touched a chair. Sit. I didn't. Talk. Her hand shook. We tried. I said, you stole. She flinched. We borrowed. I laughed once. From a child. She covered her face. We were drowning. I leaned forward. So you pushed me under? She said. I stayed quiet to keep peace. I asked, whose peace? She whispered, the family's. I answered, not mine. She poured coffee with trembling hands. Your father said money solves shame. I said it bought it instead. She looked up. He didn't mean to ruin you. I said, then he aimed badly. She begged, say something kind. I replied, tell me one kind thing you did. She searched my face. I prayed. I shook my head. You watched. Tears slid down. I was afraid. I said, so was I, every night. She reached out. You were my first baby. I pulled back. Then why did you sell my future? She cried. I loved your father. I said, you didn't love me enough. We walked into the living room where my childhood stared back from frames. I picked one up. Look, I said, that boy trusted you. She whispered he was happy. I replied he was fooled. I searched drawers and found old letters with my name written by someone else. What are these? I asked. She said, your scholarship offers. My voice cracked. You opened them? She nodded. Your father said wait. I laughed bitterly. Wait for what? A coffin? She said, for Jason's launch. I closed my eyes. My life funded a toy. She dropped to her knees. I'm sorry. I said, sorry doesn't buy years. I took a box of photos to the sink. She followed, pleading, please. I struck a match. Fire listens. One photo curled. Another screamed silently. I said, watch. She sobbed, don't. I whispered, you did. Ash kissed water and died. I said, that's memory learning to stop hurting. She grabbed my sleeve. You'll regret this. I looked at her. I already did. I burned every finished smile until only gray hands remained. I went to my car and opened my bag. Inside were new forms. My hand shook as I wrote. Ethan Reed, I said aloud. She ran out. What are you doing? I answered, naming myself. She gasped. You can't erase us. I looked at the sky. You erased me first. She begged, stay. I opened the door. I never was. She said, your father will break. I replied, so did I. She cried, I loved you wrong. I paused. Then learn it right alone. She whispered my childhood name. I closed the door on it. I drove to Mrs. Brooks's store. She was stacking paperbacks. Long night, she said. I smiled thin. Long life. She poured tea. Tell me. I did. She listened without saving me. When I finished, she said, what now? I showed her the form. She read it twice. Strong name, she said. Stronger spine. I laughed softly. It's new. She nodded. Guard it. I asked, will it fit? She answered, names grow. I left and texted Mark. I changed my name. He replied, why? I wrote, because mine was stolen. He texted, what is it? I sent, Reed. He answered, welcome. I smiled at that single word. That night, I wrote my new name everywhere until my pen ached. I said it to mirrors and dark streets. Ethan Reed. The sound didn't flinch. It stood. I touched my chest. This is mine, I said. The world stayed quiet and I liked its manners. Before sleep, I whispered, if you're watching, learn. No answer came. Finally, I slept like someone owed nothing and was owed nothing too. When I put the robe on, it felt heavier than winter. Mark stood behind me and said, Judge Reed. I answered, don't make jokes. He smiled. I'm not. I touched the sleeve. My parents used to say clothes define you. Mark said, then wear truth. I nodded and walked toward a room shaped like fate. The clerk announced my name wrong. I corrected her. Ethan Reed. My voice didn't shake. She tried again. The courtroom rose. I sat. It wasn't power. It was responsibility breathing loud. The bailiff called the case. United States versus Carter. My stomach folded. I looked down at the file and back up. Two faces I learned by pain stood where defendants stand. My mother spotted me first. Her mouth opened without sound. My father stiffened like a rusted hinge. My mother whispered, Ethan. I said, this is a courtroom. My father barked, this is a joke. I replied, it's the law. The prosecutor spoke. Your Honor, the defendants falsified records and moved funds illegally. My father glared at me. You'll stop this. I said, you'll speak when told. He flinched like a child. My mother raised her hand. Please, we didn't know it would come to this. I said, neither did I. The prosecutor lifted papers. These transfers connect to multiple shell accounts. My father snapped. You taught him to hate us. I said, I taught myself to breathe. The defense attorney coughed. Your Honor, my clients deserve compassion. I replied, compassion doesn't cancel facts. My father yelled, look at me. I said, look at your choices. My mother cried, I carried you. I answered, you dropped me. The bailiff warned, one outburst and you're removed. My father sneered, he's punishing us. I said the law is. The prosecutor asked permission to call a witness. I nodded. Jason walked in like a ghost. He wouldn't meet my eyes. I said, state your name. He whispered it. I said, tell the court what happened. He swallowed. Dad moved money and told me it would grow. I closed my eyes. My father shouted, you traitor. I said, sit. Jason looked at me. I'm sorry. I answered, tell the truth. He nodded. It was wrong. My mother sobbed into her hands. The defense objected. I said, overruled. My father laughed sharply. You always wanted to win. I said, I always wanted quiet. He said, then give it to us. I replied, confess. My mother stood. We were scared. I asked of what? She whispered, being small. I said, so you made me smaller. She said, we didn't see you come back. I said, you didn't look. The prosecutor rested. The defense pleaded. Your Honor, consider their age. I considered. Age taught them better, I said. My father leaned forward. If you were still my son, you would save me. I met his eyes. If you were still my father, you wouldn't ask. The room inhaled. I announced findings. My mouth shaped a verdict that felt older than me. Guilty. My mother screamed my name. My father sank into his chair. Sentencing followed. My hands didn't shake. This court orders restitution and confinement. My mother collapsed. I'm your mother. I said, and I was your child. The defense whispered. My father whispered back, but I didn't lean in. I banged the gavel once. Court adjourned. Outside, my parents waited like strangers. My mother rushed me. Please. I stepped aside. My father said, you won. I said, I survived. He whispered, we made you. I replied, you broke me. He looked small. I didn't feel large. I felt finished. Jason stood at the door. I'm sorry, he said again. I nodded. Learn. He asked, will you visit? I answered, leave that to memory. Mark touched my shoulder. You okay? I said, I'm breathing. He smiled. That's new. I looked at the sky. No, it's earned. A reporter asked, how does it feel to judge your parents? I said, it feels like justice saying my name. The cameras blinked like insects. I walked past them. In the hall, a janitor said, long day, Judge. I answered, short life. I returned to chambers and took the robe off. It felt like skin. I sat and pressed my palms together. Hello, quiet, I said. And quiet finally answered me. My mother ran down the hallway and grabbed my sleeve. I stopped walking. She whispered my childhood nickname like it still fit my bones. I turned but did not answer. Her eyes begged louder than her mouth. I said nothing and kept moving toward the elevators that hummed like tired bees. She followed, crying softly, each step a question I refused to hear. Silence became my shield. They call me Your Honor. I felt late. She said, please, Ethan, stay a second. I said nothing. She said, you used to love pancakes on Saturdays. I kept walking. She said, you had bugs under pillows for me. I kept walking. She said, you sang off-key in the car. I kept walking. She said I was scared then. I kept walking. At the door, she grabbed my wrist. I pulled free. She said, am I dead? I said no and left. I waited by the stairs until my heart slowed. Mark came running. He asked, are you okay? I said yes. He said she was crying. I said, I know. He said, talk to her. I said, not today. He said, tomorrow then. I said, maybe. He said, she used your nickname. I said, I lost it. He said, you can find it. I said, I will not search ruins. He sighed. I said, thanks, friend. We sat on a bench. Mark said, you did right. I said, I did necessary. He asked, does it hurt? I said, it used to. He said, what now? I said, dinner. He laughed. I said, simple food feels earned. He offered pocket fries. I took one. He said, want me to drive? I said, no. He frowned. I said, I need streets. He said, call. I said, always. He nodded. I stood and left. Outside the courthouse, my phone buzzed. A message blinked. Mom wrote, come back. I deleted. She wrote, please. I deleted. She wrote, remember nights. I deleted. She sent a picture. My small hands holding hers. I locked the screen. Mark texted, you sure? I typed yes. He typed proud. I answered, thank you. My chest warmed, then cooled. I breathed and walked. The city spoke sirens. I answered with steps. My name stayed quiet inside. I passed a newsstand. A paper showed my face. Headline said, Judge sentences parents. I folded it. A man asked autograph. I said no. He said hero. I said citizen. He shrugged. I called Mrs. Brooks. She said breathe. I did. She said you burned old names. I said yes. She said plant new. I asked how. She said water daily. I smiled. She said I am proud. I whispered thanks. The line hugged me. I walked my car. Hands shaking again. I said not again. My mother appeared behind me. She said 1 minute. I said no. She said you were judge. I said not yours. She said please using my nickname again. I said stop. She said you were brave. I said I am. She said then forgive. I said I accept. She said come home. I said I made one. She cried. I unlocked and drove. I drove until bridges ended. River smelled like steel. I parked and looked. I said you chose walls. My phone rang. It was Jason. He said she is breaking. I said so am I. He said talk. I said go live. He said I ruined everything. I said lies did. He said tell her. I said goodbye. I hung up. The river kept secrets. I threw stones. They sang small rings. I left them there. At home, I washed my face. The mirror asked nothing. I answered nothing. I practiced my full name. It sounded enough. I folded the report. I filed it away. I wrote letters to no one. I burned them. A cleaner ache grew. I cooked eggs. They listened. I ate slow. I said tomorrow. My mouth believed. I set alarms. I slept. Dreams kept distance. I thanked sleep. It stayed. I woke steady. Hearts learned this. Morning brought rain. I let it talk. It said forgive or break. I said grow. It asked name. I said read. It smiled in drops. I dressed slow. I called Mark. He said coffee. I said yes. He said proud again. I said keep saying. He laughed. I walked out. The door behaved. I crossed streets. Billboards blinked. I kept forward. Voice small inside clapped. I bowed. Rain crowned me. I did not answer again. I unlocked the door at 9, and the sign flickered free legal clinic like a brave lie. Mark set boxes down and said, partner, this place smells like hope and paint. I said, mostly paint. He laughed and handed me keys. Official, he said. I turned them once and told the empty chairs, sit when you're hurting. A woman peeked in and asked, is this real? I answered, as real as rent. She cried and entered. Mark whispered, first customer. I whispered back, first promise. The lights stopped flickering and stayed. Open hearts make rooms larger today. Please now hear. Mark pulled out forms and said, we need names on walls. I wrote mine and felt it settle. He wrote his and nudged me. Equal, he said. I nodded. No secrets. He grinned. Except fries. Phones rang. A man asked, do you charge? I said, breathing counts. He came anyway. Mark leaned close. Remember concrete? I did and said this beats it. He added by miles. A girl watched from the door. Can my mom talk? She asked. I said, yes, and you too. Her shoulders lifted like wings. Then she smiled wide and walked in today, bravely alone inside. Rachel arrived with her daughter and said, he kept you housed. I answered, you kept you housed. The girl said, I want your job. I laughed. Start with books. She held one up. Already. Mark bowed. Future boss. Rachel whispered, thank you. I said, stay warm. We talked leases and hope. The girl asked, will you teach me words? I said all of them. She wrote my name and hers beside it. Partners, she declared. My throat burned, and I said nothing because Joy finally had a chair and sat there, smiling quietly brave, bright today. Inside hearts now here. By noon the room was loud and kind. A man bragged, you saved my truck. I said, you saved your papers. A woman joked, can you fix husbands? Mark answered, only by law. Laughter stitched edges together. I found a photo in my pocket and almost tore it, then didn't. I told the past, sit elsewhere. It listened. A boy asked, are you famous? I replied, only to homework. He saluted with a crayon. I saluted back with a pen and felt ranks disappear forever around us like dust light, gentle, soft, hopeful, singing today outside, already somehow now, then. Mark locked up and said, day one survived. I said, day one lived. He raised soda. To broke beginnings. I clinked. To loud chances. He asked, Any regrets? I said, only not starting sooner. He nodded. We build. I said, we listen. He said, we stay. I said, we grow. He smiled. Judge. I corrected. Neighbor. He laughed. Partner. I accepted. Always. We stood a moment and heard the city say our names without shouting under streetlights, learning us anew, with courage small, wild, pure tonight, and tomorrow too, forever onward together, steady, open, true hearts here, now, yes indeed. I drove home alone and felt full like a table. I told the radio, we did it. It played a song that agreed. At a light, I saw my reflection and nodded. Keep going, I said. My phone buzzed. Mom again. I did not answer. I typed gentler words and erased them. I whispered, release. The road listened. I parked and wrote tomorrow's notes. I read my name and believed it. Mine, I told the mirror. It nodded back the way truth does when it finally arrives, quietly inside me, smiling softly, ready, brave and new, today, always moving forward on. Before sleep, I texted Rachel, study hard. She replied, already. I texted Mark, coffee. He wrote, always. I placed the clinic keys by my bed like seeds. I said, grow. They did not answer, but I knew. The city hummed yes. I closed my eyes and opened years. I promised, no more cages. My heart answered home. Morning waited politely. I planned permission. I dreamed desks and doors and voices saying thanks and saying stay and saying welcome until it sounded like family made of choice picked freely daily true enough warm brave bright paths now here together always ourselves.